I'm Paul Cram, joined today by Carol McCormick. She actually has been my agent, my on-camera talent agent for ages.
I didn't know what the job was. I knew I was going to have to work with fashion models, which quite frankly did not appeal to me. It's like not my thing. I didn't think it was going to be my thing. But I stayed the course for 6 months, and then the on-camera print agent took a different job, and I got her job. So then I got my dream job, which was to work with actors.
She recently retired, and her and I have a conversation talking about her work as an agent, getting started, and some of the tips and insights that she has to offer actors, as well as just some fun, zany stories. Here we go.
I actually remember your first headshot. I do.
You do.
I do.
That's
Yes.
awesome. That's awesome. I'm trying to think. I think I remember it too, actually.
You were so young. So young. But you just had this quirky appeal, and we had to meet you.
I've always appreciated, specifically with you, Carol, and with obviously I love more creative. I've always appreciated that. I've always felt like I'm like, oh, they kind of get me, which is because I am a little bit of this charactery, quirky. I always loved the phone calls from you, by the way, where it's like, well, I've got another like oddball. Like, wait till you hear this description, Paul.
Yes. Can you get into a costume?
Yes, you're going to be an owl.
Yes.
And you were just for anybody listening, I did this for you were spot on too, which I think shows kind of your instinct as an agent. I remember when you called me for that gig where you were like, you know what, this is a mascot thing. You're going to be in this owl costume, and it is I just remember you telling me, you were like, if you're interested in this, I think it's going to be something that's going to last for a while. Like it's probably going to be a good source of income. And it was. You were spot on, because year after year for a while it was like they're like, yep, we're still going to do this. Yep, we're still going to. And it was like, so I always appreciated that. I was like, Carol was right.
Yeah, I was right about that. And we were going into a slow period in the industry where I think even a job like that was important.
Yeah. Oh, for me, it was great. For me, it was absolutely great. So I'm just happy to be chatting with you, Carol. I'm so curious, like how did you get started as an agent? Like what did that even look like for you specifically?
I'm well prepared to answer that question. I graduated from Gustavus Adolphus with a major in psychology and a minor in theater. Didn't want to pursue anything in theater because I think I mentioned to you that I had terrible stage fright. So I didn't see how I was going to get beyond that. So I was just, in my early 20s, working one odd job after another when a friend of mine who worked for Joe Giannetti, a very famous photographer in the time, and she was the studio manager. And she had told me enough about that job to make me think, yeah, I could do something like that. And then she said, Carol, there's an opening at the Eleanore Moore Agency, and it's in their print division, and I think you'd be good at it. And I trusted my friend a lot, so I didn't know what it was to be a print agent, but I just walked into Eleanore Moore and said, I hear there's an opening and I'd like to apply. Filled out, the usual form that you did back then. And next day I got a call, went in and met Eleanore Moore herself, and she hired me immediately. And
wow.
I started the next day. And I remember sort of being embarrassed because I didn't know what the job was. I knew I was going to have to work with fashion models, which quite frankly did not appeal to me. It was like not my thing. I didn't think it was going to be my thing. But I stayed the course for 6 months, and then the on-camera print agent took a different job, and I got her job. So then I got my dream job, which was to work with actors.
Was to work with actors, which you mentioned stage fright a little bit. Yeah, you had a minor in theater too. So that's kind of an interesting, I mean, I guess if you're going to discover if you have stage fright, that's the way to do it.
Right. Yeah. But, the psychology aspect, working with actors, became very important. I used my knowledge of human behavior a lot over the years. In fact, I should open up a shingle and just do counseling for actors now. Why not? But
well, I specifically, I remember calling you on the phone every now and then, and yeah, it was. I'm sure that most actors do that though. We can be. I'm going to just use the term needy, where it's like, oh my gosh, and like, Carol, this happened. Oh my gosh, yeah.
I've had to talk a few actors off the proverbial ledge a few times.
Yeah,
when they've been just really depressed and upset, and yeah.
No, that makes sense. How was that time? How was the time specifically working with the fashion models? Was it?
Oh my goodness, there's one funny story I just thought of. This beautiful, tall, willowy, red-headed woman, I even remember her name, but I won't say it. I'd been there about 6 weeks maybe, and she came into the agency and she leaned over my desk and she whispered in my ear, "Carol, I don't care what the others are saying about you. I think you're lovely." It's like, that backhanded compliment, And I thought about that for months. I don't care what the others are saying about you. Isn't that welcoming? Oh my gosh. So.
Oh, Carol.
Yeah.
I love that so much. I love that because I feel like I've experienced that. Who hasn't experienced some of that kind of passive
aggressive? Yeah.
Passive, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yep. So, anyways, wow. I was glad to leave the models behind. There are models everywhere.
Which I mean, that's a wonderful story. That's terrible, actually. That's so terrible. I mean, which it kind of leads me to this next question that I had for you. I mean, because it's one of those experiences. I mean, are there any more? What's one of the most challenging or wacky experiences during your time as an agent, counting the one you just shared? That was pretty funny.
Well, I got a pretty good challenging story, which might surprise some people, and I learned a lot from it. And I was still kind of a newbie, because really you gotta be in this job for minimum 2 years before you know what you're doing. And so I was probably in, the 2-year period, and we were representing a really talented young man, whose name I will say, Charlie Corsmo. And he was like 8 years old going on 25, one of those kids.
Right. Right. Yeah.
So smart and talking way above my head. And she was amazing. And then we got a casting call from Disney. And they were reaching out to agents all over the country to find a boy to play the kid in Dick Tracy with Warren Beatty and Madonna. And out of all the kids that they looked at in the United States, they liked Charlie the best, and they wanted to hire him for the job. So that is an incredible break. Things like that just, don't happen every day. Now, here's what was challenging about it. The money was shockingly low. Even as a new agent, I knew it was low.
Even with Madonna, though,
Exactly. Even with something that big budget, they were not paying the actors anything. And they told me that even Madonna was making the same amount of money as Charlie. They call it favored nations. And, um, and I quite frankly didn't believe them. But I had to talk to a couple different Disney executives and also talk to the parents of Charlie, and really have to come to an understanding that if this wasn't enough money and they wanted to walk away from it, I was okay with that. I was okay with turning down the job, which would have crushed something in my heart, but I would have done so.
Right.
And in fact, I did have to do that. I did have to say to a Disney executive, no, he's not doing it for that amount of money. And then the phone call ended, and we just all, sat there sort of like gloomy silence, through the rest of that day. And then the next day I got a phone call, and they doubled the money.
I have to say cheers to you, Carol.
But I learned that if you really want to have negotiating power, you have to be able to say no and walk away from a job.
Oh my gosh. Like as an actor, like the anxiety I'm feeling when you say that.
But really, it hasn't happened that much in my whole career. Usually you find a compromise, you find something where that's a win-win. But, sometimes occasionally you don't. And then I have to make sure that the actor is on board. Because if the actor still really wants the job, no matter what the paycheck is, I am obligated to say yes. So it's a tricky thing to navigate. But that was an early experience I had. That was like, oh my God, I'm talking to the people at Disney.
I'm talking to some high-level executives. Well, there's something about that. There's something about that too, where for me, I'm just like, but it's Madonna and Warren Beatty, and I'm just, it's so interesting. Because it would be so hard to say no. Like it'd be really, really hard. There's a huge but I'm going to say in that though too, because Carol, like you and I remember specifically having conversations. I can attest to what you're talking about, because I remember there was conversations a lot, like because I work a ton as a character guy in indie projects, and very low budget a lot of the time, or just weird budgets. I don't know.
Yeah.
And I remember many times you calling and being like, well, here's kind of where we're at. Are you willing to work for this rate? And I do remember, I think more in the more recent years, I just remember being like, let's try to get a little more. You know what I mean? Because at some point it can't work for such a low rate. But that's really funny, Carol. That he wound up doing the movie, right?
He did. And he went on to do several other wonderful movies. And then he quit acting when he was about 14, 15, getting into that awkward teenage year. And now I understand that he wants to direct and produce indie films himself, even though he did go on to get a law degree at Harvard. And, so.
He'll probably become, that's kind of amazing. That's kind of amazing.
Mm-hmm.
So, is there anything that you like during your tenure or time as an agent? Like, is there anything that you like sticks out as like a big regret?
Oh, big regret. I've thought about that, and I think what is a regret that's a little bit personal is that I worked tremendously hard at Eleanore Moore and More Creative when my kids were little. And I didn't get to see soccer games, and I didn't get to see ski racing. And I missed some things that were really important. And I don't think my children resent me for it. They've never brought it up yet. It still could happen. The holidays are here. But so That's the only regret I have. But for the people that I met over the years and the enriching relationships and the stories I've heard and having all these fantastic creative people let me into their lives,
Mhm.
you know, unbelievable. Riches, riches, riches.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
except marry well if you're going to be an agent because you don't make much money, but you get these amazing experiences. So,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. No, that's a really good, honest, I appreciate you sharing that too, just about kind of that work-life balance
Mhm,
piece.
mhm.
Um, this is, I know that you know this, but even for like actors and, I hear a puppy, right?
My
Puppy?
my puppy just
Yes,
started
yes.
to climb on the dining room
It's
table.
like, gonna get up there. I love it. Um, but yeah, just that work-life balance. I think that there's a lot of people, not just actors. Oh my gosh. I mean, actors, directors. I mean, I've worked with casting directors back in the day. Like sometimes the hours are just nuts. So I appreciate you sharing that, Carol. And
Yeah.
yeah, I don't have an answer in all that, but
No, but
um,
I did work out a balance. It didn't happen at the right time in my life, but it did happen. I finally negotiated a 4-day week. So for a big chunk of my career, I had Fridays off. Did you know I was out of the office on Fridays, Paul?
I did, because I remember, I specifically remember Carol calling in and being like, I need to talk to Carol. And they're like, oh, she's not here. Can we help you? And I was like, well, can you? So
But yeah,
I do remember that, and I think that that's really cool that you found a way to make that work for you and your life. And
yeah,
I mean, that's awesome.
yeah.
Um,
It was my that saved me. That's why I could stay in the business for so long because I had that little, safety net.
yeah,
Mhm.
yeah.
Yeah.
I'm going to move on to another question for you. Who and what do you miss most um, from your time as an agent now?
Mhm, mhm. Well, I miss that second family that I had with the people I worked with.
Mhm.
Um, we really became close. I mean,
Mm.
a few little spats now and then, but for the most part, there was hardly a time when I didn't walk into that office and go, here I am in my happy place. And so those people are really important to me, all of them.
Yeah,
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 I miss them.
yeah. Oh,
I miss
that's lovely. That's so lovely. Um, were there ever any agents over the years that you didn't get along with? And can you name names and show us pictures?
Oh, I've got them right here
I'm just,
in this file.
um,
It's agenting is a hard job. It's a burnout job. So I did sit across from people that came and went.
sure.
Um, I would say the average amount of time an agent can, stand it is about 5 years. So in 5 years, most of them became close friends. I just had dinner with one last week. I went up to somebody else's cabin. I am meeting
Nice.
somebody for coffee next week. So, they have become close friends. But there were some that were just they didn't care enough. I guess maybe I set the bar kind of high, even though I was like constantly late in the morning. Other than that, I was very conscientious. And I would stay late if I needed to, and other people would just like walk out the door at 5:30. They didn't care. And I'm like, but we still have to get one more actor for 10 o'clock in the morning. You can't leave. But they did.
I would have to assume that that went really far with your interactions with the casting directors in town. I'd have to assume, like making sure that,
Oh, right.
yeah,
They knew that they could count on me to, pull through on the harder jobs. Yeah.
yeah,
I
yeah.
feel like I'm bragging too much. I
No,
don't need
no,
to.
no, no, no. Oh my gosh, Carol, you are my guest on this podcast. You brag and you share everything. I want to say too, like I so appreciate the input and kindness and care that you always gave me. So you are welcome to share and brag, and I'm asking you to. So please do. We are so Minnesotan too, I think sometimes, and we're like, oh, I don't want to. It's like, no, you were an agent for a very long time, and you have a wealth of knowledge. So I appreciate you sharing it and kind of peeling the curtain back a little bit and showing us a little bit about what that life was like. So brag away.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
Should I tell you about the wackiest job I worked on?
yes, please.
It took 2 months of my time. Stacked with contracts and papers and notes and emails. It was when Blue Cross Blue Shield decided to do a living experiment out at Mall of America, and they built a plexiglass apartment, completely clear walls except for the bathroom. And they wanted to find an actor who was gregarious and funny and overweight.
That's why I did not get this call. Okay. Because I was like, yeah. Interesting.
So, and we found one. I mean, to a casting director, we set it up on a casting, but our actor won. And he had to move into this plexiglass apartment and live his life at the Mall of America for a month. And it took the month before that to get everything organized and figure out how he was going to get paid and what his expectations were. And I mean, he was married and, he wasn't sure he should be, leaving his newlywed wife for that long. But, so negotiating money on that was tricky. Yeah. And, but yeah, it happened. He lived in this apartment in front of everyone at the Mall of America. And he had to go on a special diet, have special physical exams. That was in private. And
right. No, I was going to ask. I was like, how did they deal with like nudity and I was like, oh, okay, separate. Like
occasionally they would let him like pull a curtain shut, and the bathroom was private. But for everything else that he did in front of whoever was walking by at Mall of America, and he lost weight. He lost a lot of weight.
Interesting.
His blood pressure went down and his cholesterol went down. And that was the experiment.
That's a wacky, wild. I'm just imagining you on the phone call for that, where you're like, here's what I need you to do.
I know. The phone call from the casting director was like, what? They're going to do. Did I hear that right? I mean,
like, wait, what? Yeah. It's a very sciencey kind of a thing. Like, I like it, but I'm also like, huh.
I know. We took a field trip out to Mall of America. Everyone did it at More Creative.
That's fun. The dogs are alive. I love it. Do you have a most embarrassing moment like in your career that you can think of? Like where you were just like, oh my gosh.
Yeah. Anytime I made a mistake was embarrassing, humiliating, shameful, beat myself up. And when you're dealing with so many projects and so many actors and so many phone calls and so many emails, you are going to make mistakes. But I learned from them. Yeah. Probably one of my first newbie mistakes. Oh, this is terrible. I was working with 3M on an industrial film, and they were staging kind of a fake trial. And I had to cast an attorney, a lawyer. And I sent actors out to 3M, and they picked one of them. And somehow I got the dates wrong as to when they needed him. And when the day before they were going to shoot, and I was trying to get the script to the actor, I found out that he was in Wisconsin in rehearsal for a play, and he couldn't possibly do the job. And so I had to find I had to find a substitute actor, and I didn't know enough to realize I couldn't make that decision myself. I went ahead and made the decision myself, and I sent an entirely different actor to the job the next day. And I didn't have the producer's telephone number. And can you imagine how shocked they were?
I can imagine how shocked they were, but honestly, Carol, there's a part of me that's like, well, okay, you take the bull by the horns, and I don't know.
I think it was a year before they called us again. That was a terrible mistake. I should never have thought I had the power to make a substitute like that.
What did they say? I'm just curious. Did they call and were they irate or what? Yeah.
Oh, they called. They said,
okay.
What the hell is going on? What are you doing? This isn't the actor we chose. I had to explain my reasoning. I said, well, it was either that or you'd have no one at all. So I thought it would be better if I put in a substitute. Oh, that was a terrible mistake.
That's yeah. I would imagine that a producer, I don't know, producer director. Yeah. Who are you? I'm here for the job.
Mm-hmm.
Who are you?
Yeah.
That's really funny. I mean, it's funny, but it's not. I'm sure. Yeah. It sounds like you're really. I think this is very familiar to me. You're sort of being hard on yourself. I think that is a Midwestern trait I've heard, where it's kind of like, oh, I didn't quite do the job well, or
Yeah.
It sounds like you're hard. And on one hand, I think that's good. On the other hand, it's yeah.
Yeah.
If someone wanted a career, like if someone wanted to become an agent similar to you, like what kind of advice would you give them?
Mm-hmm.
Maybe something that you wish that you knew when you were starting out. I mean, you've mentioned some really good things. I'm just curious, is there something specific?
Well, you can have a lot of different backgrounds and do this job well. But if you aren't truly a people person, it's not for you. Because what's expected of you is to be authentically caring about the talent, and judgments put aside, and see the person for who they are, and figure out what they're going to be good at and how to cast them, and you have to dive pretty deep sometimes to get to that point with so many different talent. And so if you really don't enjoy that kind of interaction with the human race, don't do it.
Don't do it.
Don't do it. But and if you really want to be an actor yourself, I think it's a hard job, because I have seen that happen. That an actor who isn't having great success decides that maybe being an agent, would be good. But then they always want to do the job themselves, and you can't. It's a conflict of interest. So
I have noticed that. I've noticed that sometimes too. Yeah. So I think that's really interesting. That's good advice. If I try to ask people this question too. Like, if there's a misconception that you have seen, like a general misconception that maybe the public has or people have about agents or even the industry, what is it? And like, if you could snap your finger and people would not have that anymore, what would that be?
I think that actors believe that we have more power than we do. We have some power, little pinky full power, but for the most part, we are the person in the middle, trying to go for the win-win, trying to keep everyone happy. And I think actors think that, that we can really get them the job. We can't. The actor has to get the job. All we can do is try to get the actor in the right place at the right time. And then it's out of our hands. And it was always a mystery to me why some people consistently book more than others. And I just think that there is this misconception that we have more control over things than we do. Most of the time, we are like the last person on the totem pole. You know, we're just right at the bottom of the feeding frenzy. So once in a
That's
while,
good.
you do get to work with somebody that trusts you, and you end up almost having control over who they cast, but not often. So
That's interesting. I mean, that's an interesting thing that I would even like from your perspective within that hierarchy of power, so to speak, or so. Like I used to have the misconception, I know when I was first starting out, that agents, like you said, had more power, but I also thought that casting directors had way more power than they do as well. Like I was like, oh, they're the person they're the one who picks, and I'm like, would you agree? I mean, I they aren't necessarily. Yeah.
Right. That's a misconception of casting directors too, that they have more power than agents do.
Yeah.
They do
They
have more
do.
power than
Yes.
us. Yes. But ultimately, it's, the guy that's, runs the peanut butter company, I mean, he's the one who's got the power.
Right. Right.
So,
Yeah. In the commercial world and in the film world, I had a conversation with a casting director the other day, and she's like, Paul, in the film world, or more in the TV world, I guess, film and TV, she's like, it's not just the director. She's like, you have a writer, there's a team of people that are making some of these decisions. And it's interesting. I don't know. Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. So Carol, this has been really great. I've enjoyed chatting with you and talking, and
enjoyed it
appreciate
too.
all that. Is there anything that you'd like to say before we kind of wrap this up? Is there anything that we didn't touch on specifically? Actually, there is one question I know. There is one that I'm not quite done. What advice do you have for actors, like on
Well,
like agents, getting an agent or whatever that would look like?
I was thinking about that question, and I hope this doesn't sound too cliche, but a lot of actors sit around and wait for the phone to ring, and they get frustrated with their agents because it's like, what have you done for me lately? And I guess if I was going to give one piece of advice to an actor, is to change that attitude and start acting and start saying to yourself, I had to write this down. What have I done for myself lately? Okay. So if your phone isn't ringing and you feel like your agent isn't paying any attention to you, ask yourself, what have I done for myself? Have I taken an improv class? Have I, pushed the boundaries of my skills? Have I been practicing? Have I been staying in touch? You have to look at that stuff, and
Absolutely.
you just can't expect your agent to do everything. It doesn't work that way.
It reminds me, that's such good advice, Carol. And it is simple, but it's sometimes aren't the simple things really profound? I don't know. Like, it really resonates, and it reminds me of something that my dad used to say. He was like, Paul, are you hearing people tell you no? And it's like, and what he meant by that was, it's like, are you pushing yourself? Are you putting yourself out there? Are you trying new things? Are you knocking on the doors and being like, here's what I'm an actor, and yeah, I also feel like the expectation of an actor on an agent, like there's a reason that union agents are taking 10%. They're not taking 90% of the paycheck. Like, I don't know. There's still work that one must do. So
yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. Well, you've been remarkable, Paul, with your career, because you don't let the grass grow very long under your feet. There's always something going on in your mind. What can I be doing?
Yeah.
Yeah. How can I keep this interesting? How can I keep it fun?
Yeah. No, I appreciate that, Carol.
Yeah.
I try to. Yeah. Yeah. Hence
Mhm.
hence even us
Yeah.
chatting
Yep.
and doing this podcast and things like that. This is a little new for me. So yeah, it's fun. It's really fun. Um, do you have any advice or thoughts for because I know that what you shared is so true and good, even for a seasoned actor, but for actors that are not starting out, maybe that have someone like even myself, like is there any tips or advice for someone who's been in the industry for quite some time, um like as an agent? I
Mhm.
don't know, I'm just
Mhm.
curious.
Mhm. Well, I just love to see actors who've sort of plateaued, you know,
Hmm.
and then something happens in their life where they've decided to create their own work, or they're going to get their show up at the Fringe Festival, or they're going to take, 3 months and try a new market. They're still exploring. It kind of goes into what I said about, what have you
Yep.
done for yourself lately?
Yep.
But, if an actor who's been in this industry for a long time and it's just like getting boring to them, you know, maybe step back. Maybe step back for a few months. Take a break from it. It's a stressful business. Or try something completely different. Um,
I like that.
well,
I
yeah.
like that.
So write
Would
some poetry.
that is your that your psychology is shining, your degree
I,
is shining
yeah,
through, Carol.
I think it's out.
um if would you ever consider coming back and being an agent like at Moore if you get bored in retirement?
Um, yes,
Okay.
yes.
Easy enough.
The,
Cool.
the,
Very
the
cool.
COVID stuff changed it a lot for me.
Yeah. Yeah.
We weren't meeting actors in person, and that bothered me.
Hmm.
Um, and we weren't able to, work on castings where we're taping people anymore. And, all those COVID restrictions started to take the joy out of it for me. And I don't see that ending anytime soon with what's going on in the world today. And we're having to ask actors to self-tape all the time. And anyways, the industry changed, and my life changed back here, and I had
Yeah.
responsibilities I
Yeah.
couldn't get out of. And it was 39 and a half years.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. So
but
I'm just adding to what you're saying, but so it sounds like a big part of even your longevity as an agent, you are a people person.
yes.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which
I
shows
might get
through.
a job at a pet store.
And you're an
See?
animal person. I can tell that we can hear the dogs. Oh, that's wonderful.
Yeah.
Um, well, this has been fun. I really appreciate your insight, Carol, and taking the time to share your kind of your knowledge and some of those experiences. And Carol, I have to say, regardless of what everybody else says, I really do like you.
I knew you were going to end that way. I knew it. I should never have revealed that.
If anybody's curious, you actually can learn more about the agency, More Creative Talent. You just go to moretalent.com. More is Moore, moretalent.com. You can actually go there and hire me. Wink, wink, nod, nod, if you'd like. Additionally, you can also find out more information about myself and some of the projects and lots of other things on my website, which is iampaulcram.com. Thanks, everybody. Hope that we all keep continuing to be kind to each other.